Hey y'all, welcome back to Raw Recovery, the community. Today's guest is a force in the recovery space. She's currently working in the field and she's enrolled as a communications major at Fordham University, expanding her voice and impact. She's a traveler, a concert lover, a mom, a fiance, a sister, daughter, friend, and fully immersed in basketball life now. She's a dog mom, advocate, and leader. And this coming August, she will be celebrating 8 years of sobriety. 8 years of growth, healing, and showing up for others. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome Leanna. Hi, Leanna. How are you?
Good. Thank you for having me.
Thank you for being here. Let's get right to it. Can you tell the people what did addiction look like for you, including alcohol and anything else you might have been using?
So I think that my addiction and alcoholism looked most to me like emptiness. So the best way that I've always explained it, it's like you have a heart and it's just black. And it's just black around you and there's nothing. There's no friends, there's no home, there's no money. And it's almost like living a rainy day every single day.
When did you first realize your relationships with substances wasn't normal? Like, you know how some people can maybe use here and there. When did you realize that wasn't something you can manage?
It took me a really, really long time. I think that it took probably until I might have been like 25, 26 years old. I think the first time I ever had my first attempt at getting sober, which was in 2015, between like doing everything that was suggested to me, was the first time that I acknowledged that I did not have a normal relationship with drugs or alcohol.
And when did you say you first started?
I started probably right before high school. Right before high school and it started with drinking.
Okay. I was going to ask, did narcotics and alcohol show up differently or did it seem like it kind of blended for you?
They showed up differently for me. I always say this is like, I could have acknowledged I was an alcoholic by the time I was 19. When I look back and I see like my life from the time I was like 14, 15 years old till I was 19, I look back and I say, that's an alcoholic. When drugs came into the picture, it was very hard to understand that I was a drug addict too.
At what point did you actually realize you were a drug addict? When did you consider yourself an addict?
I probably considered myself an addict when I started using intravenously. That's when.
Okay. A lot of people separate alcoholism and addiction. How would you say they show up similarly for you?
Because I replaced one for the other.
Break it down for me.
So when I acknowledged, back when I was 19, I had gotten my first really big consequence, and I got a DUI driving up the Garden State Parkway, and drugs and alcohol were in the picture, and it was at 8 o'clock in the morning. I had my brother's car, and I totaled it, and I got the DUI, and I said, well, I can't drink anymore, and that was like my first hard consequence where I said, there's alternatives to that. There's stuff that you can't smell. There's stuff that at the time, because I was so young, didn't think it really impaired my driving. So I replaced one for the other. And opiates were really big. I didn't understand them. Well, everyone was doing them though. They were the new thing. They cost a lot of money, all of that. Where I still didn't want to be myself. I still didn't want to, I needed to fill a void regardless, because sobriety there was no shot of understanding sobriety or alcoholism, no matter how many times it was like put in front of my face of, hey, you might be an alcoholic. I'm 19, no.
Right. Can we just stay right there for a minute when you were saying opioids were first coming into the picture? You can remember that time. A lot of our viewers weren't around. Or can you tap into that and share a little bit of what that was like when it was first coming on the scene?
Absolutely. So I remember the first time a Percocet was handed to me, or some kind of painkiller, and it was me and a couple friends, and we were driving around, and someone said, we were all drunk, and they said, "Here, take this." And I had a friend with me who was like, "Leanna, don't do that." But in the back of my mind, I was like, that's next. So it took a couple weeks. But at the time, unknowingly, this is when the opioid epidemic was like, or is it epidemic, pandemic, one of the two, was hitting the Northeast really hard. So now everyone around me, other than probably my close high school friends, now everyone's doing them. Wow. It was so crazy because these people that I was like surrounding myself with would take these really quick weekend trips to Florida and come back, or they're going up to Yonkers, New York, and they're coming back, and they would have to go and re-up. And first it was really cheap, and then it would get like really expensive. And that's kind of, so the first time that it was like introduced to me was in 2009. Wow. And I can say that I turned it down the first time only because my friend was sitting right next to me, like my best friend in the entire world. And we were both drunk, and she was like, "Are you nuts?" Okay. And I was like, "That's next."
Yeah, I heard you say that. That keeps replaying in my mind, hearing you say that's next. What was that feeling knowing that you might possibly try that next?
I don't know.
You know, the reason why I'm staying with you on that is because as an alcoholic, I've seen people do cocaine in front of me, and I always, if I was still in my addiction of alcoholism, I know that cocaine would be next, you know? And when I was in the rooms, I think one of the things that might have scared me from that is hearing someone share that, you know, alcohol is already, you don't want no smoke with alcohol and cocaine. No. You know, that's basically what they were saying. So, I'm just like imagining what you were thinking, knowing that you might possibly try something
I think harder. It was one of those things of like, I'm already here, right? I'm already young. And one of those things of like taking this party girl, cool, like want to fit in, but doesn't have to take it to the next level. Like, where can I bring myself next?
Wow. Do you think alcohol is minimized because it's legal and it's socially accepted? Like, obviously, it's easier to access. Do you think that's why people don't give, like, people such a hard time with drinking as opposed to other drugs, because we do classify alcohol as a drug? What are your thoughts on that?
Absolutely. I think that the access, the socialness around it makes it a lot harder for people to acknowledge that it's a problem. And I think that with the access of it being almost affordable, like, okay, maybe you're not drinking the Grey Goose, maybe you're not drinking the top shelf vodka, but guess what? Then you're drinking the bottom shelf instead. That's more. So I think it's harder for people to acknowledge that.
Well, what do you think people misunderstand most about alcoholism in comparison to a drug addiction? What is it that people are stuck on that they can't see that it's the same?
You know, I hear this a lot because I work in the field where it's like, but I don't do drugs. I just drink. And in my head, like in my personal head, it's like you're being delusional because I've been around for so long of like understanding what alcoholism and addiction is. But I think that people have a perception when they're in it that, well, I'm not going on the street. I'm not going, like, I can still afford it. I don't have to steal from anyone. And I think they get stuck in that, where again, it's the social acceptance of it that surrounds it of like, and maybe their life isn't turned all the way down. Maybe they're not, you know, the average, what they might think is an alcoholic. And maybe that's not their choice, but they're drinking every day and can't stop. And they're not acknowledging that. And I think that's the misconception. It's like, so maybe you don't have a drug dealer, but you have the bartender.
Right. What was, for you, what was going on internally before anyone knew you had a problem?
You know, I believe I was born into this disease. I believe that I was born with it. So when I sit there and I think about anything that could have taken me to the next level, right? Like I can remember being 3 years old, being told I was allergic to chocolate and still going to eat it, right? Break out in hives and still want more, not including the consequences. But then when I think it took like a height, like when it took another level, it was, and I almost remember this like it was yesterday, where I was like, this is what I'm going to do every day. And I had been in my second relationship in high school. And the first one was really bad. But then the second one was another level of bad between, he was a little bit older than me and he had an older brother that could buy us alcohol. And eventually the relationship got like physically abusive. And I think the last time that I had felt some sort of way, or maybe the last altercation happened, was when I said, I don't want to feel this way anymore. Because not only was I like even looking at like my trajectory of picker of men, now here I am left with nothing and it's all my fault. So being like a DV survivor, right? Because I mean, I remember that day like it was yesterday, and I don't think I'll ever forget it, under the influence or not.
Right.
And I just remember saying, I'm going to drink every day.
Wow.
And that's exactly like the rest of my like end of junior year into my senior year, I did exactly, or at least attempted to do exactly that.
Well, what do you think substances were giving you emotionally before they started taking everything?
They were fulfilling me. I was prettier, I was smarter, I was louder, I was tougher. I was everything that like, inside, I'm this tiny little girl. I'm small. I have big feelings, but I'm small. I'm scared all the time. And when you put a substance in my body, all bets are off. All bets are off.
That sounds like you were also possibly using it to cope with some sort of anxiety or trauma. Does that ever cross? Like, did you notice that the things that you probably would suppress, it was easier to suppress when you were taking drugs or alcohol?
You know what's interesting is like when I look back on like my childhood, right? Because a lot of people like, I wouldn't attach it to my childhood or any childhood trauma. But when I move forward and like I look at my life when I'm getting older into like my preteens and my teenage years, absolutely. And I attach it to that of like whatever void or whatever happened, you know, in that amount of time between trauma, because I had a couple traumatic events, couple car accidents, 2 terrible boyfriends, girl, like all of that in high school. And then that's when I say, oh, this is over. Like, this is what my life is going to be, because I'm not crying. I don't feel that pit in my stomach of like, oh, why doesn't he love me anymore? Why is this happening to me? Because I really love playing the victim card. Love it. So take the substances, and I'm not playing the victim. I'm a survivor. I'm better than. This should have never happened to me. And it switches my whole mindset about what happened in high school.
Wow. My next question is kind of like intertwined to the answer that you just gave. But earlier you did mention how alcohol gave you this sort of boost. It's like encouragement or courage for you. It made you feel prettier. Once things started to go a little bit more south and things were becoming destructive, how did it distort your self-worth? How did it make you feel after you started losing things?
So I started to, once my self-worth, even with like coming down, right? Like coming down from a drunk, coming down from a high, like my self-worth completely was depleted. I don't know when I lost it, because there's no signs that point to say like, she has no self-worth, like growing up or high school until, you know, my own choices did that for me, right? And so when I would come down, it would just be gone. I didn't have anything to start with that being said. You know, when this all started coming with, it was like the self-worth I had lost from putting myself in certain situations was being recovered through substances, alcohol, whatever I could do, relationships, to just have that disappear. It's back to nothing again.
The courage that substance gives you, did you find yourself getting involved in some risky and dangerous behaviors that you know you wouldn't even in your right mind sober?
Absolutely. I had grown up right outside Seaside Heights, New Jersey, which is like the Jersey Shore. You see it on TV, all of that. And when I had turned 18 or 19, I ended up like getting a fake ID. I'm old enough now, it's fine. No one can come for me now.
Right. I hear you.
And I would portray older than what I was. I would put myself into situations, like I would black out. And next thing I know, like I'm with someone that like I should not be with. I'm begging, I'm calling frantically for a ride home. I got to a point where it's like, I don't even want to know what happened last night. Let's move on anyways. You know, because I'd get so distorted in the sense of like, everyone coming to tell me, you know what you did last night? You know what you did last night?
Girl.
And it's funny because last year, like, you know, helping me with getting sober, like I'm a product of a 12-step program. And one of the big ones is like making an amends. And I was able to make a very serious amends that entertained that type of behavior, where I had like a very decent response. But it took me out of my element to not be who I was, to not be the friend that I was. And it took me a really long time to own that. It took me a long time to look myself in the mirror and be like, you did that to that person, to whoever I hurt, right? Not what happened to me, because I learned that like, there's some things that we can't control, under the influence or not. And when I had to take a look at myself to be like, you do owe that person an amends. And I got the truth out of it, you know, and that was one of the best things that I could have done. We were able to like hug it out and move on from it, and like have an understanding that like, that wasn't me, you know, I would have never been there. And those are my exact words. I was blacked out, and whatever story you told yourself is fine, right? I said I was blacked out, and had I had been a sober individual, I would have never been in that position to begin with.
Respect. Definitely,
You know?
definitely. Thank you for sharing that.
Like when saying that, like trying to be respectful of the situation, because I think when I say that, that person's gonna know what I'm saying, but trying to be respectful in the situation to the situation, but with also not minimizing like people who didn't have control. Does that make sense?
Yes,
like
definitely.
There are situations that I had, like had I been in a sober mindset, I would not have been with these people. And granted, they were like in groups of friends, but like being a sober individual, I would never been with that person anyways. Or have had a shaded area of, was it consent, was it not? You know?
I do. It's unfortunate that when we're under the influence the next day to have that feeling, damn, was I with that person? Like, that's the worst feeling in the world, to not know where you were the night before or who you were with the night before. That's actually scary.
Or how did you get home?
Especially.
And then the car's there.
Oh, girl. I'm 2 DUIs in. I just got my license back after 10 years.
Yay!
Right. But how did those questions of how did I get home? Yeah, that's a scary one. It takes me into the next question. I can speak from experience that, like, I was never suicidal, but I have been in a situation or a space where I didn't care if I lived or if I died, you know? So Have you ever felt like you didn't care if something bad happened to you at all?
Yes.
Yeah. Can you
I
share
think that, so before I got sober this time, I was on like a 3-month bender, and my entire mission that 3-month bender was a suicide attempt. And I had the notes. I mean, essentially, right? Like I had a plan. But it's funny because I'd never understood those people who felt like that before that. I always wrote, and again, like I think this goes into my sobriety, like there's some parts of it, like before this time where there was no humility. And it was like, well, I've never felt that way. Like I just do this because I can, or I'm not, like I've never felt that way. I never felt that way because I'm constantly high.
Right.
Whereas the last time, which was like, like it was one of my darkest mental notes where it was like, I do not want to live. It's not that I don't care. It's like I'm on a mission to end it. And every time I woke up, every single time, and on record, like there is no overdoses. There's no hospitals. There's a couple hospitals of like infections, but there's no overdose records. There's no nothing. And I'm very grateful for that. But at the same time, during that moment, right? Why not?
Why didn't it get that bad for you? That's what you wanted.
Yeah. Why didn't it happen?
Wow. That to be in that you have to really be in your sick state of mind to be in that mindset. And even though I've had my own experience with addiction, hearing another person's story, it always hits different. Yeah. That's something that I've actually never even encountered, hearing someone say it. Why didn't I? Like, you know, waking up again. Would you say being functioning or appearing to be okay to the outside is something that kept you in denial a little bit longer since people weren't noticing?
So in the beginning, yes, because I was like, I'm talking very in the beginning, because once I started to lose it all from addiction and alcoholism, anytime I went back out, it was automatic almost. But when I was first like in it, when I was like in my early 20s and I could maintain 3 jobs, what's wrong with this? It's all rich people stuff. I can afford it. I'm not robbing you. I'm not doing anything wrong. I show up to 3 jobs. My 3 jobs is I was working for a private care place because I had my CNA license. I was a waitress. And then I was working down in Atlantic City dancing. So like to sit there and say, functional? Sure, I can pay my bills. But is that functioning when that's what your life is revolving around because you're literally paying for the next thing? Sure, I could maintain a job, but it wasn't long until I couldn't. So maybe that batch I could, right? That batch of my life I could. But then the next batch, I can't keep a job for more than a month.
Ooh. Girl, talk about it. Oh my gosh, it's so crazy. I know what it's like, fired, job after job. Like I could get a job, but keeping a job, I literally fell asleep like on mad jobs. You know what I'm saying? Like I'm in the social service field and I've literally fell asleep with a client sitting across from me. Who the fuck does that? Like an addict. Me, right. We were talking previously about consensual sex and, you know, things that may have happened while you blacked out. And before I put you on Front Street, I'll just put myself out there first. And I know that whenever I'm under the influence, I have a really wicked, like I can find myself engaging in sexual activity that I wouldn't typically engage in if I'm sober. I don't even know to this day. That's why I'm like kind of stuttering over it. Not because I can't talk about it. I'm totally open about talking about addiction, period. This is something that happens, right? But I think why I'm struggling to say it is because I don't even know the mindset that I would get in while I'm under the influence that would make me want to engage in sexual activity, and this is consensual. This isn't me being, raped or forced to have sex without my knowledge. I'm saying there were times where it's just like it was an urge that I had. Is that something that you can relate to, or
For sure, because I mean, at the end of the day, right? Like we all I feel like as again, not even on the side of the sense of non-consensual, right? Like the consensual part when we're under the influence, I mean, sure it was there because you're calling your ex-boyfriend,
right.
You're calling this person, and then while you were talking about it, brings it back to those times that I may have done that, right? Who did it hurt around me? When you don't think it's hurting anyone. Or when you're kind of half in the bag, kind of not, and the person that might have been a little cute because you have the goggles on, and then you're like, oh my God.
Come on now.
But it was consensual.
Right.
And you're like, no.
Oh my gosh. That is the worst feeling in the world.
It's the worst.
I was treading on thin ice just now when I wanted to bring that up with you. But I'm just I know I ain't the only female, especially a person in recovery that has had those nights where it's fuck, I know I didn't. Did I? God damn. Which literally brings me to my next question. I'll just change it up a little bit. But what does it feel like to have to piece the night together? Even years later, right? Recently, there's a person that I messaged and I asked him, did we have sex? Because I'm getting flashback memory of the night. And he happily said yes. But to me, it's just why would you want to have sex with someone who's not there? I don't even remember having sex with you. So I know I wasn't there. How are you even enjoying a person who's not there? So I guess my question to you is, how do you feel when you are piecing together the night or from last night or years later? Is it an eerie feeling, an angry feeling, or just a confusion? What is going through your mind?
I think when it does arise, right? Because I've had a couple incidents, right, where the non-consensual have messaged me, and I'm like, oh, I get really I don't want anything to do with it, and I don't respond, and I just don't want anything to do with it. But I get a very big pit in my stomach. I get sick, and it's don't even, what you know is what you know. I had a therapist one time tell me, and I've been applying this to everything, right? I had a therapist one time tell me, I was like, why? And he was like, what if you don't need to know why right now? And I've applied that to probably all of it. I don't need to have if you hurt me to that extent, whether you thought it was or you didn't, and I don't need to tell you how I feel. Because when I think back about it, right, like I mentioned before, I wouldn't have surrounded myself with you guys anyways.
Right.
So I've kind of just again, mentioning that I am in a 12-step program, and you get to 8, 9, 10, and it mentions about making an amends. If it doesn't harm you or others, if it's gonna harm me in any sort of way, I don't need to confront it. Can I confront it with a therapist? Can I confront it with a sponsor or someone who I look up to? Absolutely. But I don't need yours, because it was a couple years ago, one of them tried to make an amends to me. And I was like, no.
Wow.
I didn't respond. I moved on quietly. It made me very uncomfortable. It made me uncomfortable knowing that he had access to my social media. It made me uncomfortable knowing I was possibly still on his mind. Even if I was on his mind or a target or anything like that. All of that made me uncomfortable enough to say, I'm not opening these doors. Because I get to protect my peace now.
Thank you. Okay. I needed to hear that, sis. Thank you for that. Thank you for being vulnerable to speak about that in this space, because it's not easy. but you don't even know what you just did for me. Just that advice right there. I don't have to give everybody access, and we don't even have to have our kumbayas and apologize and this and that. Let's just not even cross that, because it might be a little bit too much mentally for me or the person, whoever's listening in. It might be a little bit too much to even cross that. So
I feel like I get very hypersensitive with those situations too nowadays, where like, and that's how I know I'm an addict and alcoholic. The normal person doesn't care. The normal person doesn't get bent out of shape. I'm not a normal person. A message shouldn't bother me. That message did. And I let it, there were two of them. And I moved on because I could not handle it emotionally, so to say, or mentally. Because then it brings me back to like, why did I do that? And I go to the blame game on myself. I don't blame anyone else. I put myself in where I sit there and say, that's me. When it wasn't. I wasn't even there mentally.
And I think it's important to stress the fact that you weren't there mentally, because even outside of that, with some of the situations or behaviors that I've displayed in my addiction, I was not there mentally. I can have guilt. You can put the blame on me still because it was physically me doing it, but like mentally, I don't. There's a lot of people who are still even upset with me for things I just cannot even remember. You know what I mean? Like imagine apologizing for shit you don't even remember. That hits different too. How would you say shame showed up for you whenever you were made aware of some of the risky behaviors that you were a part of, or some behaviors, period, that you displayed while you were in your
It only
addiction?
drove me deeper, right? Like, I had to work on it when I got sober. But in the moment, right, you wake up, you're disgusted with yourself. You're disgusted with the world around you. What's your coping skill? Do more. Until you get to a point that's long enough where it's not bothering you anymore. And guess what? You're already in it. And that's just my story. That's not everyone's, but like that is how I would deal with shame across the board. Not just even waking up from a night out and not remembering. That's how I dealt with shame all the time.
Even though we have to forgive ourselves, we do, take responsibility for the things that we did and that we were a part of. How do you separate responsibility from victimhood when your addiction was involved in the situations that took place? How do you separate the two while still taking responsibility, but then also remembering not only you're a victim of the disease and you're a victim of some of the situations that you were a part of? Like you had said, I shouldn't have been around certain people. I mean, that's straddling also taking responsibility, but then now I'm because I feel the same way. I shouldn't even been around this man, right? But that still don't give you the right to touch me without my consent. So how do you separate the two? How do you make sure that you're stepping in the right direction?
I think I did a lot of work around it because I don't like to take responsibility and I don't like to take accountability. Like active addiction, active alcoholism, me does not like to do any of that. But when it came to getting sober and taking a look at some things, and like I mentioned before, like some things you don't have control over. Some things are definitely not your fault or your responsibility. But then there's some situations that you can find. Like who else did it hurt besides you? Did it hurt your friend? Was your friend upset when she heard about it? Did it hurt your ex because it was his friend? Did it hurt your ex because it was his enemy? Like those little things of like, and again, like with the exes, I don't teeter that line because let bygones be bygones. Like I could say as like an active alcoholic and addict, I am revengeful and I am angry and I will do anything I can to hurt someone. Sober me, on the other hand, knows boundaries. And I think that like when it comes to people that are still, that after so much time had come into my life, I think that shows a way of like, you need to take responsibility some way or the other. Mm-hmm. Even though it was not like, even though it wasn't technically your fault, just to, there is a little bit of responsibility you could take.
I understand.
Yeah.
What is something addiction took from you that's still kind of hard to talk about to this day? Like, what are some things that you think back that and even if right now you say you can't share, but like, that's how I'll phrase it. Are there still things that kind of haunt you that you don't even want it? If it pops in your mind, you just immediately trying to push past it.
So like when you do the math, right? And I don't like to talk about this, but I will touch on it because it has been such a long time that like, I wouldn't say I've moved on, but my life is different, mm-hmm. right? But one of the things is like, my son is 9 and I'm coming up on 8 years sober. That is the hardest for me to look at. That is the one thing that has all of the consequences in turn that come with that have been in my face. Some of them are irreversible. Mm-hmm. And I am reminded of that all the time. Mm-hmm. And as much as I can sit there and try to convince myself, it's been so long that like people, whatever, it's still there. Mm-hmm. And that is the biggest one that I have not been able to, I wouldn't say not face, because I have to face it every day. But I think that's the hardest one that I really, really messed up on.
Respect. Well, so a lot of people who are on the outside looking in, who just cannot really wrap their mind around addiction, they'll be wondering for certain situations, this didn't get you sober, all of that, this didn't get you, and you, even with you being a mother and your son, what are some lies addiction tells us that keeps us using, even when we have so much to lose? What are some lies you can remember telling yourself that made it okay for that day to use?
So, I mean, when like in the beginning of my addiction, like I said, like I wouldn't have like put myself up there of like, oh, I have all this, I have this whole traumatic line of history where like I felt like I could just use at the drop of a hat. No, I'd get at least like 6 to 9 months, 3 months, like all in between and go back out because I wasn't convinced I was an addict. Mm-hmm. But when my dad passed away, so like in the year 2016 was like my year of excuses. It was my year of lies because just to run it down, right? Like in 2016, I had gotten into this really bad car accident while I was pregnant. Mm. The things with, having a baby under a lot of stress and trauma. And then my dad passing away. Mm. And after my dad passed away, all bets were off. Mm-hmm. And my biggest lie was, if you knew what I went through, you would use too. Ooh. If you knew what I had been through, you would understand. Mm-hmm. And some people understood. Mm-hmm. Some people understood why I could not stop using.
And do you feel like since they understood, it was kind of like excusing it and made it a little bit easier to continue to use since you didn't have the pressure of people like, why is she using? Since they actually had your back.
The pressure stopped.
Yeah.
The pressure stopped. And it was my outlet. Fine. And you know what? This is going to sound sick, but it was like, the pressure's gone. Mm. Nobody cares anymore. Mm. And not in the sense of nobody cares. Maybe just everybody understands now, It
gives them something to piece it together. This is why she's doing it.
And then at that point, it almost felt like silence, in the sense of like, they're going to leave me alone now. Mm-hmm. And then eventually they don't, because then I'm like, eventually they think of it as like, oh, she's gonna die any day now, and then I'm still not dying, so now they have to get involved. You know, it's one of those things of like, but in the time, like after that all happened, and like the lie again, like even with getting sober in between that, like after that, I was like, I'm doing it for my kid. I'm doing it for my kid. There is no intention of doing it for myself. I have to get my kid back. I have to do this. I need this for my kid. Not one time out of those times of getting sober from 2016 up until 2018 were any of it for myself.
Wow.
I had every consequence under the sun in 2016. From emotional, physical, materialistic, like you name it, those consequences came at me tenfold.
Wow. That's pretty deep when you were saying about how your family was showing up for you in the times of like being understanding. So like you were able to like kind of step it up with your drinking. How would you say addiction affected your relationships in ways that others couldn't see? Just in that you were saying that they're basically excusing your behavior because of all of the things that they see you going through, and it's just like you're kind of like hiding behind that so that they give you that grace in a way.
I mean, so like growing up, I had like a good relationship with my family. There's nothing to sit there and say like I didn't grow up with a good family, you know? And I'm not saying that to brag, but like my mom and dad were together. I have a brother that's not that much younger than me. He's like 16 months younger than me. So we grew up as best friends. I have a sister that's 9 years younger than me. So like when the addiction starts, right, was probably when me and my brother had like a huge falling out, and we haven't been able to reconcile it or repair it to the extent that I would want it to be. Mm-hmm. He might be happy with the way he wants it, and like I know my mom is just happy that we can be in the same room together now. Mm-hmm. But with that being said, the way he viewed that time was I just made everything much worse. Mm. My mom, during that time where she kind of like pushed, I mean, she would show up for me, right, when I asked her to. But other than that, I mean, the lady has so much more going on during that time. Like, I say that it was, you know, they left me alone. Well, look at everything else that they were, you know? So it's like, but like today, my mom and I have a very good relationship. My brother and I have a better relationship than it was, you know, however many years ago when we had a huge falling off. And then like my little sister's like my best friend. Mm-hmm. You know, she didn't grow up with me. Like, I think one of the things that bothers my brother, it's like, we're so close in age and I'm not like you. Why are you like that? And he doesn't get it. Mm-hmm. And that's okay. Mm-hmm. But it's still like, it hurts, but we can be in the same room together now, you know? Mm-hmm. So.
Time. And, you know, I can speak from experience. Addiction definitely puts a strain on our relationships, but when it comes to your siblings, you know, those are like your first best friends. Like
exactly.
Like you said, like my older brother, I always say he's my first best friend. And when we started to get a strain, and it was hard, you know, and we're back where we were, but that time in between, I was hurt. Like, you know, I could have never imagined that I was going to go through those struggles with my brother. Like, addiction really came for every relationship. And I remember saying to my higher power, like, please just don't take like my mom and my brothers and my dad. Like, you know, I remember just saying that, like, because I knew I was about to lose a lot of relationships, but I was just like, please, just not them. And I just couldn't hold on to any strong relationship. Not to say that I haven't been able to repair them, but like, I know that feeling of it's your sibling. That's your first friend.
And I think that one was the one that hurt the most because when I was younger, like in my first treatment center, and, you know, again, I'm the older sister, like, maybe I don't know. I really don't know the cause, and that's okay but I will not forget when it really hurt was when it was like 2004. And again, like I remember this like it was yesterday, you know, it was 2014. We're doing family therapy. I think my mom and dad may have convinced my brother and my sister that he'd take them shopping or whatever they would do to show up. And the therapist had said, your sister can die from this. Mm-hmm. And he went, I don't care, was his response. Mm-hmm. And that hurt. Yeah. But do I believe it was anger? Sure. Have I had that conversation with him? No. And that's okay because it's on God, like on your higher power's time. Or like I said, when I had to make my big amends this year, I had multiple opportunities to make an amends, but it was not the right time. Mm-hmm. So I know that when there's a will, there's a way. And if it's meant to be repaired to be what it was, then it will be. But again, like I look back, right? And I look at my life today and who I was back then. We're two totally different people today too. So maybe it doesn't get repaired and we just live this way forever, you know? And that's okay too, because at least he's answering my text messages now, you know?
I like how you said, and that's okay too. For people who are listening in, I'm one of them, right? I wanted to repair every relationship, but you just might not, right? And even if it just gets to a certain point and it doesn't get any further, that's okay too, right? Because when I'm saying some people like, can really get caught up in the fact that, you know, some relationships just aren't going to be what they were.
Right.
So it's important to stay right there when you said it is what it is right now, and let time. And if it doesn't, if things don't go back, then, you know, we just take it from where it is. But like dwelling on old relationships, that can definitely drive you crazy.
Oh yeah.
Speaking from experience.
Yeah.
What moments from active addiction still stay with you today?
What moments from active addiction still stay with me today? Like memories?
Memories, or even like maybe behavior that you notice that you still like, they call it addictive behavior. Is there anything that you still notice about yourself?
I try my best to like, this time around, I really tried my best to like completely change, to completely make a 180. Mm-hmm. That includes my, like everything that I had done in the past, right? Like manipulating, lying, stealing, whatever. Luckily, like, can I be a little bit manipulative to get what I want? Probably. But but is it in harm? Mm-hmm. I wouldn't say so. You know, some of the things that like I try to avoid as much, like, and it's basic sobriety, right? Like stay away from people, places, and things, right? But I try to do my best, like stay away from old behaviors too. Mm. Stay away from doing the things that you did, staying away from things that I did that didn't make me feel good after. Mm-hmm. Like cursing people out, or I don't know, coming off like super aggressive, not coming off in a kind tone, coming off as a tough girl when I'm not. Mm-hmm. And that's kind of where I stay. Like I try to come off very loving and kind, and I don't try to have this like hard exterior anymore, because the reality is like there's nothing hard under that exterior. Nothing.
What you said, I'm a jelly bean?
Yeah.
That's cool.
A jelly bean.
Yeah, that's it is. It's cool. At least you know you, man. Alcohol definitely, I say it all the time, they call it wines and spirits for a reason. You know what I'm saying? That's Dr. Jekyll, Mr. Hyde. That's just not who I am. And I'm grateful for the people who were able to stick it out, because I from what I heard, I'm a mean drunk. So, yeah. What stigmas around alcohol and drugs delayed you with asking for help?
I didn't look like them.
Come on.
I wasn't homeless.
Talk about it.
I had a car.
Okay.
I could maintain jobs. I wasn't shooting anything. Everything I did was what celebrities and everyone else was doing. Mm-hmm. Everything that I was doing in the beginning was highlighted. I lived a party life. That is everything I wanted from a kid. I wanted to grow up, get married, and have parties, because that's what I learned from a very young child, right? Like I watched and glamorized my own childhood. My mom and dad have kids. My dad drank. We'd have parties. All the cousins would hang out, and we had a great time. Right. There was no homelessness. There's no money for this. There's nothing's under the Christmas tree. There's no food on the table. I had everything I wanted as a kid that I didn't notice. If there were hardships, I didn't know them.
Right.
So when you see that and everyone's happy and they're laughing and it's a good time, that's what I wanted. So now I get older and I'm starting to entertain the drinks, no matter how many times it was told to me, you have alcoholics in your family. Yeah, I don't know them, so who cares?
Whoa.
You know?
I do know.
Your cousins are addicts.
Wow.
I don't like them anyways. I'll never be like them.
Right.
And then you start and you try to aim for it. And sometimes I think that's why I got into relationships that I did, because I wanted that family and I wanted exactly that. Because my parents were in love. Great parents. You know, my dad was a cop. My mom was, she wasn't a full-time employee, but like she was home with us, you know? She worked as like school hours. So she was home in time by the time we got home, you know? But like, we went on vacations and, you know, you see some other people who don't get to do that, you know? And we'd have like, it was just something that like I was very blessed to have growing up. And I wanted that for myself because it didn't seem hard.
Right. No, you know, it makes sense. Like, specifically with alcohol, not everyone becomes an alcoholic, right? So if I'm seeing people able to socially gather and enjoy the libations, when I try it, of course, I'm not expecting to become a full-blown alcoholic at any point in my life.
Or
you know?
It's in the sense of like, you're surrounded by functioning alcoholics. They might be struggling. And I say that because that is a part of my family. Functioning alcoholics. But still not seeing the demise of what comes with it. And then eventually, you know, I had put myself into a position of doing something that I wasn't ready for, essentially, right? Like I was such in a rush to grow up. For what? You know?
The dumbest thing I've ever did was become an adult. So
100%. 100%.
Yeah, okay? So,
but I look at myself, I'm like, just stay young. Yeah. You don't want to be that.
Bills and shit. Yeah. This might be a little bit of a strange question. Would you say that you were treated differently depending on which substance you were using? If people knew that you were currently... And let me take it a step back. Did you like binge on alcohol and then would you binge on opioids, or was it always blended? So that's like a twofold question.
First it was alcohol, and I would binge because it started as not an everyday drinker, but when I drank to excess. When I drank, I blacked out. There was a few times, and that's funny because all the times that I drank, there's only a few that I can remember versus like, oh, I had a drink at dinner. Like I didn't drink like that. So first it was the binging, then it turned into every day. And then as a good addict and alcoholic, I knew what would work for me, right? So I'd come up with a concoction of like, I have to do this first and then this, and then I'll even out. And that applied across the board. So whether I did them together or not, it was still, you know, if I did it one way versus the next, I'd have a different reaction versus, and I would be very conscious of that to not mess with my, I don't know, I guess my chemistry of what was going to work for my body, you know, in that sense. But like, also I lost all my friends when I started doing drugs. So like, it was one thing for my friends to see I was drinking, right? And I'm talking about my high school friends, but also in turn, like it got to a point in high school where it was like, she can come, but Leanna can't. And I would be like, I always, you know, never looked at that as a problem. And I'd be like, I don't want to go there anyways. No, I did. You know what I mean? Everybody was there. Of course I wanted to go there. But not looking at that. But like there were some times where, you know, my high school friends might have said like, hey, you know, take a look at this. And I would be so nasty. And eventually it burnt my whole friend group. Like I had a very good core group of friends from the time I hit kindergarten. And by the time I was 22, 23, they were nowhere to be found anymore. They wanted nothing to do with me. It wasn't until they came back kind of in my life was when my dad passed away. And I don't remember any of them individually like texting me, right? But I do remember them there. I do remember them consoling me. Wow. I do remember them surrounding me. I do remember what my addiction put them through. Right. Whether they said it or not, maybe they didn't come and have an intervention on me, but there were the signs of like something's going on. The parents don't want you spending the night there anymore. They don't want to help you. When like I used to turn around and be like, oh, my parents do everything that, look what you're doing. Your parents would not be helping you, you know, like if you were the friend. So I take a look at that and it's like, absolutely it had a difference, because when I started to dabble in the drugs, like very close to the, like at the end of high school, that's when the relationship started to fall almost immediately. And then new friendships would form. Friendships that my regular friends would not approve of, you know, or surround themselves with. And that kind of like highlights of, yeah, definitely was treated differently. But because I'm a good addict and alcoholic, you might treat me differently, but I'll find a group that won't. And I'll still be okay because you guys weren't good friends to begin with.
That's the way we think, right? What would you say, how did you feel when you were first like trying to get sober? Did you feel like people were kind of dismissive? Like I guess it might be a little different since you had alcoholism and you struggled with your drug addiction. So in any case, when you were trying to get sober, did it at any time feel as if people were dismissing your attempts to getting sober? Because some people don't see addiction as a disease anyway. They feel like it's just something with any substance. They feel like you can just stop. Were you ever in a position when you were trying to get sober where people made you feel like it's not that big a deal, or they were dismissing what you were trying to do?
I was very blessed to have a dad who understood, in the sense of like, he was a cop, so he saw that. He knew people could get to the other side. The whole side of his side of the family has been cursed with alcoholism or addiction. And I am very grateful that he never dismissed me for that. And he never dismissed me even when I didn't understand. Like even getting sober and not understanding what I was doing, what it meant, nothing. Never dismissed my journey. Are there people who dismissed it? Absolutely. Like people who, I can't remember correctly, but like in turn of like, you know, my mom had gone to Al-Anon really early. So like she turned, you know, did the whole Al-Anon thing of like, I'm going to turn my heart cold and like just expect the worst. And then that was fine. But I don't think that I was ever told just stop. I think that I was surrounded by really good support. You know, like I mentioned, like maybe some misunderstandings, but never non-supportive. And that you don't hear that all the time, right? Like when I look back, I'm like, I'm very blessed with that, you know? So
I heard you mention your dad is a cop. Did you have run-ins with the law while you, and how did that work?
So my dad had passed away in 2016. So it was funny. It was funny being in high school. It really was, because I'll never forget it. Like, oh my God. One time my friends, like I was sleeping at my friend's house and, I don't know, there were, I guess, car burglaries going on around the house. I'm talking about we were like 14, 15 years old. And I had like gone outside to like go meet a boy or something like that, whatever. And the cops get called because I'm going outside. The girls, like my friends, are sneaking around the backyard. So it looks like they're creeping. I'm creeping. There's all this so someone calls the cops. So the cop drives me home and my dad goes and answers the door in his underwear. And I'm like, oh my God. So that's like one of the highlighted ones. But when I actually started to really get into trouble, it was, do not use my name. You will not use my name. And I remember the first time I got put in handcuffs, and that was when I was 19. And I said, they put me in the cuffs. I was like, well, my dad is and they were like, too late now, lady. Like you, and I owned that. And then after that, it was kind of like, there was another time my dad, there was another time that had happened, and I didn't tell anyone till after I'd gotten out of like jail. And when I called him when I got out, I wasn't there long. Like I never did like all this amount of time, but like the time, like I called him and I was like, Dad, I'm just getting it. And he was like, you're this, you're that, calling me all these names. And then was like, but I love you. And then, there was another time, I think after that, that caught him off guard. And he, like, I'll never forget it. It was like this big deal happening, and that involved the county's task force, which is when they go undercover and they, yeah. So when they had pulled me out of the car, because I had my nose up in the air, like, I'm not gonna lie, it's like, oh, you don't, like, that type of attitude, like, you should know who I am and all that. And when he had pulled me out of the car and started getting my name, and there's only two of us in the area, like, there's me and another, like, there isn't a lot of Leannas in my area. He was like, you could just see the task force guy's face, and he was like, Leanna, what? And I go and I tell him my last name, and he was like, oh my God.
He knew your pops.
Yes. And he was like, I was like, oh, let me guess, like being all snotty. And he was like, so this is how we're going to handle it. Like, you're either going to call your dad or we're going to. And I said, I'm not doing anything. And sure enough, I'm sitting where I am and I hear these flip-flops, and somehow my dad had caught wind that this is what was going on. And he was like, lock her up and throw away the key, da 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 da. But then after that, it opened my eyes. Like, I can't be here. And I ended up moving to Florida. And like within 2 weeks of that, I had moved to Florida and, tried to start my life over there. But it wasn't he didn't rescue me ever. I stayed true. Like, I wasn't going to embarrass him. I knew that was a thing. I wasn't gonna, like, yes, did I get all of that? Absolutely. And even after he had passed away or before, like, I remember getting arrested down in Florida, and he was like, I was blowing him up from the jail phone, like, you can't believe it. And he was like, I don't care how long you're sitting there. No one's coming for you. Because he knew I was safe. Because he knew I wasn't running the streets anymore. So it never saved me. When I actually was like getting in trouble, it never saved me. But getting pulled over and getting a ticket, sure. But not in any of like the very serious. There are some people that wanted that, Like, and that's something that's a little bit unforgivable to me. No matter how much like I look at it, like, you shouldn't want that for anyone. Right. But when I look back on it, like, I joke about it with my mom all the time. And she's like, you think that's, I was like, it's hilarious. My attitude was like, who would be kind to that?
We're sick, Mom.
Very.
If you watching it, it's not.
We're sick.
Don't forget.
She's going to hear this clip and be like, there she goes again. This story.
Hey, man, we try to help the next person so that possibly they don't got to live through it. And if they are living through it, clearly you're not the only one who's been through it.
No.
Leanna's been breaking it down like it gets deep. Sis, what is the hardest truth you've had to face since getting sober?
I think the hardest truth I've had to face was that some things are just unrepairable. And that it's still okay. You don't want it to be, but it's okay. And if someone had told me that very early, like, I would have spiraled. Someone did tell me that everything was going to be okay. And I didn't believe them. I said, no, da-da-da-da-da. My number one thing, right, like today, when I look at my life and what I love, it's all the aspects of being a mom. And when I missed the beginning. I can't get that time back.
Right.
I can't get back or redo any of that. All I can do though, and that's been the hardest thing to face, no matter, because I can still really beat myself up over it. But guess what? Tomorrow I still have to wake up and get my kid on the bus. Mm-hmm. Nothing's stopping me from doing that.
Right.
And today, nothing stops me from being a mom. Like I will not, like there will be nothing that crosses me. And I think when I actually got sober, there were times in the beginning where I really questioned it. And I'm being open about this because I don't think it's spoke about enough. Mm-hmm. In the sense of like, moms are supposed to have this facade that they love everything. And sometimes it doesn't help a mom get to recovery. But I would go back and forth all the time in like my early recovery, even before, like, do I want to be a mom? Am I meant for this? And in the beginning, that's a scary thing mm-hmm. to have to think. Mm-hmm. Today, because I should preface and say like there were so many things against me of like wanting me, that like leading me to the road to be a mom, mm-hmm. you know? But today, my kid has no idea. He knows the word sober now because I like work in the field and I'm on the phone all the time. But he doesn't know anything that I've done in the past. Mm-hmm. He doesn't know that version of me. Right. Because when I ended it, he was so young. Mm-hmm. He never has to know that version of me. Right. And I think that's one of the most things that I love, and also one of the things that's the hardest.
Wow, that was beautiful. I love how you said at this age, he doesn't even he might hear stories if you share it with him. And then briefly, how concerned are you for the next generation? You know, since you mentioned briefly that, you know, addiction runs in your family, how do you prepare yourself for the conversations that you would have to have with your kid?
I've thought about this mm-hmm. a lot, and I don't have the answer to that.
That's fair.
I've thought about this. I think about it multiple times a year. Mm-hmm. But when that conversation comes, it's going to be said the way it should.
Perfect.
You know, there is no preparing yourself for that mm-hmm. conversation. Mm-hmm. There's been times where I thought the conversation was going to happen sooner than later. Mm-hmm. But what my son did ask me was, he did ask me about my sobriety recently and asked me what it meant. And then I was like, so you do listen. Mm-hmm. Kids listen, guys.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Fact.
So that was interesting, where I was like, well, I just don't do anything that jade my judgment. Mm-hmm. You know, I don't drink. I don't do anything else. You know, that's what that means. Mm-hmm. And he was like, okay.
Simple. That's okay.
Okay.
Right. I like how you said, basically cross that bridge when we get there. And I'm asking, I haven't been blessed with children yet, but I do have 2 young nephews. And I since I know that addiction runs in our family, I want to be the cool aunt. You know what I'm saying? But I also want them to be able to talk to me about everything. But I don't want to act like it's not something that I'm concerned about. You know what I'm saying? With our family, if we could break the cycle, hopefully it ends with me. But it doesn't make me unaware of the fact that, you know, we got the next generation to worry about and be concerned about. Not so much that we're concerned that we're watching our every move, but like, you know, when that time comes, how are we going to have those conversations?
And I think about when it was handled to me, right? Like, I was so young when my dad started to tell me, alcoholism runs in your family. Yeah, okay. I don't know who you're talking about, right?
Yeah.
Like, that's what it was.
You said that about your uncles or something.
Yeah, like people I haven't met. Like, I didn't know, like, even the people, like, he wasn't mentioning people that were actually in my face. Mm-hmm. And then when he would bring up, like, the drug addicts in my family, mm-hmm. right? Well, I'll never be like them, so it's fine.
Right.
Because when you're that young, between like 13, 16 years old, you're not open-minded. Mm-mm. You are not open. So when I think about it, right, like when it comes down to it, it's a matter of like making sure I don't lose myself. And like, I don't want to say as much education as possible, but when the education comes, then that's when it needs to be done, right? Like, that's when he can learn. Like, I remember my sister saying, who's 9 years younger than me, like, my brother grew up very close to me, not understanding, where my sister was like, that's everything I don't want to be, and has ran with that because of all, not because, well, I guess I was a big evil sister, but just of what I would put everyone through, and she saw it on, like, on the sideline. So I think that when it comes to preparing, I don't know if we will be, but the best all I can do is like be an example. And I think that's the best anyone can do. Like, it's fine to not drink or use. You know, like, you can be okay. And like, you know, for some reason, like, they start to say stuff like drunk, or, you know, making up these silly words that they hear in songs and da-da-da. It's like, you don't know what that means yet, but we can have a conversation about it and explain like what it actually means. And that's kind of where we've been, like, as a parent, that I've kind of taken that road on, because the next generation is important. Yeah. My son's born to 2 addicts. So what are the statistics with that, right? You know, so it's always been on our mind, but doesn't mean it's going to happen. If, you know, I hope not.
Of course not.
You know?
Yeah.
Because like we were talking earlier, like, I wouldn't wish this on my worst enemy.
Right.
Absolutely not.
I would not wish it on my worst enemy. But again, the fact that you guys are aware of the fact that you are going to have these conversations, you know, it makes it a little bit easier, because it's not going to catch you off guard with the preparation of having to sit down with him. But I definitely don't want to scare. I just don't want to scare the kids off. Like,
no.
I want to stay the cool aunt. That's all I'm trying to say. I'm the rich auntie.
Well, that was my thing. It's like, I don't, because, right, like, addiction and alcoholism is very scary. It is a horror story. It's a horror story that we like actively live when we're in it active, right? Yeah. So when I think about it, I don't want to be scary. I don't want you to be scared for me like so many other people. I want you to know that I'm stable. I want you to know that when you wake up tomorrow, I'm going to wake up too. You know? So I think it's a matter of like educating when the time is right. I think overexposure isn't the best thing, but underexposure doesn't help anyone. Right on. You know? Just like my life, it's like a matter of balance and like finding the right time to do so, you know? And is there a timeline? No, but I know that time is coming. He might see this podcast and find it all out. You know what I'm saying? Like, it could be then. Yeah. But it's nothing like it's something that no longer with his mom or his dad, like, it does not have to be an issue. But that doesn't mean it's not to be an issue tomorrow either. Right. You know?
Respect. All right, Leanna. Who are you today? For the people who got to hear your story, your backstory, the good, the bad, with sobriety, who are you today as a person? And I'll give you another question. What would you want the people listening in to hear about who you are today, so that they can have some sort of hope? You know, like the person who's like actively, currently, maybe might pop on this podcast and get a glimpse of hope from your story. What would you want them to hear?
If you're listening and you're struggling, it will be okay. And you can ask for help. And someone will help you, no matter how many people that you lost. Respect. Someone can help.
And who are you today? Who are you as a person today with your sobriety?
As Leanna today, with, you know, my sobriety date is August 10th, 2018. Today, I am me. I'm a mom. I'm a daughter. I'm a fiance. I'm a dog mom. Like, I am fully employed. I am a friend. I am everything 10 times over that I lost. everything that I had lost as a person. I lost all my friends, my home, jobs, money, kid, dogs too. I lost all of that just to wait for it to come back 10 times over when I was ready.
Right. When you were ready.
When I was ready.
Powerful. All the things we could have if we just stay sober, people. And everybody's recovery is different. What worked for Leanna or for myself may or may not work for you. But what we do know works is taking the first step and asking for help. So anyone tapping in, we have some resources for you. Leanna, if you can briefly share some resources that people in the Jersey area are in.
So I work for a New Jersey facility called New Jersey Recovery Solutions, and they have resources all over New Jersey that will accept places if you have insurance, if you don't have insurance. There's a couple of places you can always call the SAMHSA hotline, which I don't know off the top of my head, but you can always call the SAMHSA hotline. They normally lead you to a direction that openly has a bed available.
Okay.